what is the kind of likely outlook over the next 10 years economically? I think that things will steady in 2010, and there'll be 10 very difficult and slow-growing years. But I don't think there'll be depression years in quite the same way they were in the 1930s. Indeed, we sometimes forget that between 1933 and 1939 were some of the best years for the British economy. Actually, in the last 100 years, it was a year of booming manufacturing in many areas, light industries, car industry, electrical goods, new industries like radio, television. It was really boom times. And you know, the Spitfire that won the Battle of Britain, the foundations of that were laid in that decade before 1940 by an emergent and very powerful British aerospace industry, supported actually by a government that directed funds to Merlin and Haviland, who built the engines and the airframe in a way that, in a laissez-faire free market fundamentalist world, you'd never consider doing. And actually some of the kind of corporatism that Britain adopted in the 1930s led between 1931 and 1950 to the reindustrialization of Britain. So there's kind of, which actually I think helped fend off fascist and communist temptations in Britain. And to pick up on Mark's point, I mean, I agree with him very much that, you know, we are in a period in which politics of right and left are really problematic. And I was very struck on Thursday with the protesters. You know, there was the Riders of the Apocalypse, there were climate change people, there were poverty people, there were people against, you know, the madnesses of mad finance. But there wasn't really an integrated story that the left were telling in the way that you could tell it in 1935. This wasn't a crisis in capitalism, this wasn't a crisis in private property, this wasn't a crisis of overaccumulation or declining profit, you know, the kind of things that Marxists would say in 35, nor was a review that there's a utopian socialism that one can build on a hill, shining city that one can build on a hill, to which we can all rally. Idealism on the left in our times is much more fragmented than it was then. And on the right, there's an equal problem. And I sometimes run across the dwindling band of free market fundamentalists. There's one wonderfully eccentric person called Fraser Nelson, who writes a political column in The Spectator, who I ran across in a television studio earlier in the week, who's telling me that the solution to this credit crunch was the free market. And it's, you know, actually, you know, he is like a kind of a druid, and there are, you know, I tried to explain to him that any free marketeer and the best, you know, classical economists and free market economists in the world are still trying to work it out. How could it be that in May 2007, a market of some thousands of financial and non-financial institutions that buy and sell an insurance policy for securitized debt called credit default swap rates had driven the price of those down to new lows, saying that there was no risk in the international financial system. The market, profit-seeking, perfect information nearly, thousands of participants, no monopoly, corresponding almost to the free market of textbooks, came to the most serious misjudgment that's been made since the war about what really was happening in the economy. So the right have no longer got free market economics to hold on to as a kind of a credo. And the left are at sixes and sevens about telling a class-based story of actually what politics is about. In these circumstances, it's very, very tricky. And that's why I think there are really kind of two perspectives on offer. And neither really are that inspirational, but I'll choose the least bad of them. The one that's really ominous is actually in this world reaching for some kind of agenda to inspire people, make people cohere and follow your flag. You talk nationalism, and you can see that. I thought it was very interesting that Gordon Brown gave a speech in the European Parliament, rather good speech, but the man who got the most hits was that Tory MEP, what's his name, Patricia Clavin, who made a really a kind of absolutely kind of fatuous speech in which he kind of said that, you know, the axioms of the free market were the way forward in the middle of a credit crunch, when it's plain to, you know, even really most rational people that there's something wrong with the way, you know, markets operate in the financial system. That got 2 million hits on the websites, and that's repeated all around the world. There's Chinese nationalism, and the Chinese think they're beleaguered by the Japanese and the Indians and the Russians. There's Indian nationalism. They're thinking they're beleaguered by the Pakistanis and that the Hindu is threatened by the Muslim and by the communist China. You look around the world, in the fiscal stimulus package that Mr. Obama drove through, there were lots of protectionist measures, not just the ones in the steel industry, but now you can't drive a truck into the United States without having a huge kind of tariff on it. So the Mexicans have hit back, and it's very dangerous. It's really dangerous. You can see it in Russian politics, the rise of nationalism. You can see it in East European politics, and you can see it in Britain with the rise of Euroscepticism, even when it becomes clear that the European Union is one of the kind of building blocks of any kind of sensible response to this kind of credit crunch. The other kind of agenda on offer, which is the one I buy, but it doesn't get the blood racing, is actually towards a kind of a progressive, more moral, more principled capitalism. The kind of things they're talking about at the G20, and the kind of things that actually both Gordon Brown and David Cameron are kind of fighting over that political space here in Britain. That is actually a level-headed and sensible way to organise our affairs, but it doesn't actually appeal to people's passions. Let's have a level-headed, principled capitalism, folks. Rally to that flag. Protest for that. And I think you need some utopianism in your politics. The best utopianism, of course, are the people who want to save our planet and do something about climate change, which is why so many young people are idealistic about that. But whilst that's a single issue that I totally sign up to, you can't organise a political movement around just one issue. You never could, and you haven't been able to in the history of kind of political thought. So I'm with Mark. I want some utopianism, please, to allow us to kind of fight for a kind of a stakeholder society, a kind of mutual reciprocity, some mutual respect, some less inequality, kind of decent world in which to live. But you do need the left to keep the right honest, and you do need the kind of right not to lose their heads. And at the moment we have a left that's not keeping the right honest, and we have a right that's losing its head. And the paradox is that in 2010 we will elect, when you should be electing a kind of moderate, liberal, social democratic government to put it all back together again. Who are we going to elect in Britain? We'll elect David Cameron. He actually is quite a good guy, but the people underneath him are unreconstructed. Very, very difficult political situation in my view. Thank you very much.